How do we make agents work with humans?
The agent is better at some things, the user is better at some things, and together now you've kind of 10x'd.
What are your metrics?
Our strategy is to be that default. It was open source before it was really a company. It took a life of its own pretty quickly.
We're selling 100x increase. Imagine that you're hiring a multiple PhD professional, but they have one problem.
Say what you want to do. Say what you want to learn.
In pieces laid behind the scenes, the price they've paid, we study close, reveal what's real, deconstruct truths unsealed,
Welcome to our next episode of Deconstructed podcast, where we are trying to deconstruct businesses to different blocks and trying to understand ideas, processes which are beneath the surface.
Today, we have an amazing guest who is building an open source technology and a very important technology for the current world, because you're hearing agents everywhere. Like agents are going to replace TV, I think, at some point. But how do we make agents work with humans? And a lot of times you might have heard this word, or rather a phrase, human in the loop. How do we enable people to loop in their input into what agent does? And the answer to that is Copilot Kit and its founder, Atai Barkai. I hope I did not butcher. Okay, good.
Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. Welcome, Atai, to Deconstructed VC.
Great to be here.
So just maybe to start things off, how does one start an open source company? Like, what led you to it?
Good question. So maybe I'll briefly say what we do. So Copilot Kit, we make infrastructure, as you said, for copilots, which are user-facing, user-interactive agents, as opposed to fully autonomous agents. And we actually pivoted into this from what we were building before, which was an LLM-based media database. And Copilot Kit started as an internal tool that I open sourced and kind of took a life of its own pretty quickly. And so it was open source before it was really a company, is the short answer here.
That is a good answer, and I think that applies to the majority of successful open source startups, because you just build something that you want to use yourself, and then other people start using it, and then like, I could maybe build a business on that.
Yeah. No, that's kind of how we thought of it. And early on we had a discussion. Should we keep it open source, right? Because it was open source by default, but do we want the business to also be open source? And I'm very glad that we landed on the open source side. Our strategy as a whole is to be the default solution for building user interactive agents. The world of developer infrastructure, if we're going to fast forward a few years, there's going to be a few solutions that everybody uses, including the very large companies. And so that our strategy is to be that default. And from a business standpoint, being open source, you're now a pillar of the tech stack. You're not just selling features and functionalities. So that's our strategy, and it's been.
How did you make this decision, actually?
Well, we realized, fast forward, right? Work backwards from the end result. Mm-hmm. What is it going to look like once this field has been set up? Developers, the money comes from the very large companies, right? So that's where you have to monetize. They have the budgets. But the very large companies, they use whatever the ecosystem designates as the thing that you should use to solve a problem. They very often don't have their own weird solution that just they use, right? So if we look at the previous world, everybody uses Next.js, right? The indie developer just starting out and ChatGPT. So we wanted to become, essentially the Next.js of the agentic front end. And so the ecosystem kind of, enmeshment is the number one priority. I think that's often true in general with developer infrastructure, but especially so in this field, because you have this vacuum that just opened up, a couple of years ago, and becoming the solution that fills the vacuum is really important. So that's kind of our number one priority: become the best solution that developers want to use, that they can build on top of, that they can grow an ecosystem around, which we actually are driving even harder towards. So we started open source, but now we're also open protocol, which is kind of an additional open source layer we can talk about and then work from that. And you don't need to monetize everybody. You can build the enterprise platform, monetize at the top. And
let's maybe dive deeper into this. So let's try to draw like a map of. So let's say we notice this a lot. Like every time a larger company is looking to build agents or use agents, they're always facing this buy or build. So there's a startup pitching something to them that is like end-to-end 360, gives them the result. But again, it's a startup, so unreliable. And their own engineers would always raise a hand and say, hey, we can actually build it using open source internally. It's just going to be our stuff. And like open source is going to last. Like even the startup behind it doesn't. So I'm a larger company. I want to automate my customer service. I know that human in the loop is probably the answer because a lot of time, like somebody wants to escalate something, we need user input. A lot of times, we might not have enough data to have fully autonomous agents running. So what technology stack from open source would I use?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And there's two ways to look at Copilot Kit from a business standpoint. One of them is actually this kind of bridging this tension from the all-in-one drop-in solution that just works and the low-level control. So we're actually serving both of these markets and kind of slowly meeting them in the middle. And ideally, you can pick and choose. So there's things where the drop-in solution is all you need, and then you can save all this complexity, and you can have your application engineers engineer it rather than the kind of top 1% AI engineers. But you really do need both. And so if you're looking at the tech stack, we initially started Copilot Kit with what we call kind of the all-in-one agent that is easy to use. And then we built co-agents, which is the same agent user interactivity infrastructure that we had built for the all-in-one agent. We brought it to the low-level agent framework world. So we started with LangGraph, which is kind of the biggest agent framework. So after we built this co-agents for the LangGraph ecosystem, this really, really resonated in the ecosystem. And the leaders of many of the other top agent frameworks came to us and asked us to build the same for their ecosystems. So, and obviously we're very glad to do that. So we did then a partnership with Creo, kind of building the same infrastructure. And then we learned two things. One, almost all the work that on our side was shared across these frameworks, which we didn't know going in. And two, if we're going to go one by one to all the kind of top agent frameworks out there, it was going to take us 1.5 years to serve everybody we need to get to, which is what led us to build this open protocol I mentioned, right? AGUI, which stands for the Agent User Interaction Protocol. And basically brought this layer from under the hood to over the hood, kind of cleaned it up, made it an open protocol that anybody can build towards. And just less than 2 months since launch, almost every single one of the top agent frameworks now has a first-party integration with AGUI, and kind of pointing to AGUI and Copilot Kit as the way to bring the agents into user interactive agents. So I would say like on that, if we kind of zoom out now, what do you use in the stack? Obviously, the very bottom, you have the LLM APIs.
Oh, yeah.
And lots of great options there. Then you have the agent orchestration layer. And there's a lot of options there. You can use no framework. You can use one of the top frameworks.
LangChain, LangGraph.
Mastra, Agno, Llama Index, Pydantic. I'm sure I'm missing somebody, I'm sorry. But, and then at the top you have the user-facing agentic applications, right? Which is both an application and an agent. And Copilot Kit, we strive to be kind of the best glue layer between the application
but
and the
there
agent.
also would be like MCP for the agent to interact with software.
Yep.
There also would be like Mem0 for memory, something like that. There would be something for evaluations that companies would use. So there's a bunch of different technologies.
That's right. Yeah, every one of these layers you can decompose into the different building blocks that make it. So eval is extremely important layer, memory is extremely important layer. MCP you mentioned is really interesting, right? So kind of the way we position AGUI is kind of this
MCP to people.
Yeah, exactly, right? So MCP, that's agents to tools and context. A2A from Google, that's agents to other agents. And then AGUI, that's agents to users through user-facing applications. So yeah, exactly.
So how do people use Copilot Kit mostly now? So you're getting a lot of success, a lot of traction. People.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of forks, or people just take it as it is?
Most people take it as it is. There are a lot of forks, but kind of, relatively, it's fewer. But a lot of these forks are from extremely high quality, important contributions and then kind of merge things back into the original work stream. And especially now with AGI, we're seeing really a lot of that. Yeah, so the use cases, so I mean, by now we're the leading solution for agent user interactivity by growing margin, right? So we have many tens of thousands of installs every week, over 22,000 GitHub stars, and all of these are growing at pretty high rates. And by now we're working with all the way from fast-growing Silicon Valley unicorns to Fortune 100s and really kind of everything in between. And the two main use case categories that kind of dominate one is what we call the SaaS Copilot. So you have an existing SaaS application and now we want to build an agentic interface for it, right? So instead of find the right menu, the right button, just say what you want to do, say what you want to learn, and the agent helps you do that or learn that. And the second big category is what we call the productivity copilot. I'm still looking for a good name for that. It can maybe call microagents. Somebody pitched me yesterday, so it's called microagents. And that's, you have a business function that maybe in a perfect world you want to fully automate, right? Maybe you have 1,000 employees doing this right now, all day long. That's all they do, this one type of thing. But the technology is not there for full automation. It's clear, it's not nonsense. It's not generating,
Maybe not even technology. Maybe they don't have enough structured data. Maybe they don't have enough, maybe they don't have a single source of truth. Maybe the process is messy. But yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point we can maybe come back to with the data, because I think that's kind of our second act that we're seeing in the future there, but we can get to that. But the end result is if you want the agent to just do the whole thing, it's producing something that is amazing. You're looking at it this is amazing, right? Is this for $1 instead of for 2 hours of work? But you can't press send on it. You can't just use it as is. And so the solution is build this kind of like a cursor for anything, right? That the user, the expert, is working alongside this agent. The agent is better at some things, the user is better at some things, and together now you've kind of 10x'd this person. So that's a second
to bring an example into this, you take like your best customer support agent, maybe who's a team lead or a manager, and you empower them to like do a work of 100 customer support agents where like they become manager of agents using Copilot Kit.
Yeah, it can be manager of agents. It can also be, I think that's an interesting UX question. What does that UX look like? We talked a little bit about this, offline. Is it single-threaded? Not. I think there's interesting discussions there. But the end result is you see a clear lift, right? And we're now at the point where these companies are sharing with us, hey, look, we put this in production. It's being used hundreds of thousands of times the last few months, and we're seeing a clear lift in productivity. And I think we're just getting really started in this type of thing. It's only still the early adopters, the early companies, but definitely the future of software and very likely, the future of productivity. Unless, AGI comes next year, then we're out of business.
We still don't know what is AGI, because but I think the first big thing AGI would have to do is persuade all of the scholars and researchers that it is AGI and the definition of AGI is correct.
But something is coming for sure.
Yeah, well, benchmark. They keep coming up with new benchmarks, and then they keep breaking benchmarks because labs end up tuning their networks to be good at benchmarks.
Yeah, some benchmark hacking is.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking about this, usually for choosing open source strategy is a hard decision. And what are your metrics, are your KPIs you're looking for?
Yeah, so like I said, the most important battle for us to win in the next 2 years, which can't be fought in the same way in 2 years from now, is the mindshare and the enmeshment in the ecosystem, right? And you're the default, not when you say you're the default, but when everybody else is pointing at you and saying, you're the default. If you're using my part of the ecosystem, go use Copilot Kit to bring it to user interactivity. So that's the number one thing we're going after. And the metrics there are, they're indirect, right? But they're pretty good. So installs, usage, right? Which we don't see as open source detailed, but you see that just top line number. It's opt-outable, but a lot of people don't opt out. So GitHub stars, it's kind of, everybody's like, oh, it's a vanity metric. Sometimes you hear, we've seen pretty good correlation between that and everything else. I think if you just optimize for that, then any metric becomes meaningless.
GitHub stars are much better than Google review stars.
Yeah.
Because engineers are usually way more conservative in praising something.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, generally I think installs and usages are kind of top line metrics.
So now that we kind of deconstructed what like an open source stack of technologies for an agent might look like, and again, I want to deconstruct this further for our less technical audience. Basically, explain what the concept of open source software and how do you make a business on it.
Just say any advice for people who are looking into this direction.
Because yeah, a lot of people are like hearing, oh, open source means free, so it's not a business. How do you do a business on something that is free to use and everybody can copy it?
Yeah, so it's even more hardcore than free to use, right? It's you're actually giving the thing away. They can run it on their own software. They can modify it.
Yeah, they can run it in their basement.
Yes, and most of our users do right now, honestly, right? Which actually is a huge advantage for a young startup, because the Fortune 100s are not going to trust a young startup to host all the user activity data that's flowing through these systems. So I think that's a huge advantage for startups. But yeah, so the way you make a business, right? This has been done many times by now. So there's kind of a playbook. You offer the base technology as open source, and then you offer an additional layer around it that is geared for enterprises, and that's where you monetize. And in principle, anybody can go build that additional layer because it's open source, but you are kind of the default, right? You're you have the mind share, you have the funding. So if somebody else is really doing a better job than you building the enterprise layer,
right?
Yeah, exactly. And you can evolve it with the technology, right? If you want to build some feature in the enterprise, you can just build whatever it needs in the open source side. So I think if you're not the one building the enterprise solution, you kind of screwed up. But it is something that's really important to keep in mind, right? You have to build these things at the same time, right? So where you monetize in the end of the day, large enterprises. That signal is actually a little bit invisible from the signals we talked about before, because they're small number of important users. So I think it is important for open source businesses to consider the enterprise and build toward the enterprise early on, not even just for revenue, just so that you have that signal to evolve the product so it's not just good for the community, but also for these businesses that have different needs from.
And the signal also loops back, because like once your ecosystem partners hear that these like 5 Fortune 100 companies use you, they're like, they might be the standard.
Yeah, no, that's true. And it definitely loops back kind of exponentially. The better you do, the easier it gets to some extent. Yeah, we're seeing that at this point. Again, we have a lot of just the top companies out there, period, that are somewhere in our stack.
There's a lot of great examples of open source technologies that have become beautiful, valuable businesses. Well, Red Hat is probably the most expensive one, acquired for, what, 34 billion, I think? Something crazy. But then ClickHouse, that originated within Yandex as a OLAP database that they just like open sourced, and then all of a sudden half of the world was using it, so they decided to build a business, is now a 5 billion company. And NGINX is what probably 70% of consumer websites are built on, was acquired for 2 billion. So there's clearly a very large market for that. But who buys open source companies and why?
So I mean, who buys the companies? That's a separate question, I suppose, because that's not necessarily the destination you're going for, but it obviously could be. I think in our world, I guess there's 2 answers here, right? First, I do think that there's a lot of large companies who could want to own something like what we're building that have no organizational capability to build probably even either the product, but also just the whole ecosystem around it. So that could be a good insurance policy. It's not what we're going for, but I think, if you look at most of the cloud providers, most of the model providers, even the IBMs and the Ciscos of the world, I think could find a lot of value in that. Again, that's kind of more of an insurance policy, and I think the ecosystem love and enmeshment and mindshare is one of the number one things that are very difficult for a lot of these kind of larger companies to build. Of course, with AI, that's a little bit different. The model companies, they have a lot on their mind anyways. But yeah, if you look at the IBMs of the world, that's a huge advantage. But I think if you look where this is going, right? So you always kind of try to, what's the right pattern match? And everything is a little bit different, but there's still some pattern matches. We think of ourselves as kind of similar to the Vercel of the AI world to some extent. So Vercel, Next.js is the backend for the application front end. Copilot Kit is the backend for the agentic front end. And so monetization-wise, Vercel is, I think, it took him some time, but they're starting to become, pretty profitable business. And I think there's parallels for everything that Vercel is doing in our world. So that's kind of our pillar one of monetization is, just the hosting, the CI/CD, the analytics. So we have, hosting CI/CD instead of application analytics.
Let's deconstruct that. So hosting is when people don't want to run your code in their garage. They want this done as a service and they pay you.
Yep.
So you get a cloud, you build all of the security around it, and you use them, let them use it as a hosted solution.
Yep.
What's CI/CD?
CI/CD is you have a lot of developers eventually building alongside this product. Each one of them is making some tweaks, and they want to see what is working in their own development environment that runs against everything else. And then when they merge it to the main branch, you want that to just become the thing that serves everybody else. So that's what's called CI/CD, continuous integration and deployment. And so you can do the exact same thing for the agentic front end, right? So developers, they just want to commit their code, push it, and everything works. They don't want to glue all these pieces together.
Okay, so and they pay you for that.
Right.
Okay. In terms of percent revenue, what do you mostly bet on? What do you mostly bet on? What's going to be the lion's share of the revenue?
Yeah. So our actually larger bet is on the second pillar. That is not even the Vercel type parallel. So that first pillar is, kind of do what's done for the application agentic front end with the agentic front end. The second pillar is really a data play. So you mentioned data before, right? Reinforcement learning is what took GPT 3.5 to ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
And what made the coding models really good at coding. And what now they know that last weekend we had the Math Olympiad result, right? So it's a really important layer that so far is really restricted to just the hyperscalers, the base model layer, for the most part. But there's a market out there for data, right? So if you look at Scale AI, right? What are they now? 15 billion or what was it?
Yeah. 30-something billion valuation for the company. So they paid 15 for half of the company.
Twice what I thought.
Yeah.
One of the most valuable data sets you can have is here's what the AI generated. Here is the one sentence that I want to change into the other sentence. And the going market right now for this type of data is on the order of dollars per edit. Guess what? If you have thousands of people using Copilots every day, all day long, you're getting this all the time. That's literally what is happening passively.
Especially if it's expert data.
It's expert. It's kind of doubly expert, right? It's on the one side, you have product managers and the whole organizations that are optimizing, okay, where should we speed up our engineers? What's the most important, valuable thing for our employees to do? And that's where the agentic application is born, right? And you have whole teams just working on that. And then the individuals actually working, they are the experts. That's their job, to generate whatever content that is. And they're extremely well motivated to make good content because that is their job. So they're not labelers fixing AI output. They're just doing their job. And in the process, you now get this extremely valuable data that right now is just being thrown away
It is incredibly valuable. So Marina and I, we were looking at tens, maybe hundreds now of different unsuccessful applications of AI agents towards different business functions. And we coined 3 main reasons people fail at implementing agents. The first one is they don't have a single source of truth. So that's just, also a data problem, but the different angle of that is, they are trying to automate their sales or sales intelligence, but their salespeople do not really use their CRM system. They have a separate booking system.
So it's a context problem.
Yeah, so that's a context problem. So AI doesn't know where to look for the most recent up-to-date data. The data might be contradicting itself. It's this is why all of the coding agents are so good, because code base is the single source of truth. It cannot contradict itself. The second biggest problem is rules. So if the process does not have any rules that define it, let's say it's brand marketing. There are no rules in brand marketing. It's good to break rules. So a lot of times the agent doesn't quite know what is expected. So I'd say it's a prompting problem, but also somewhat a context problem. But the third largest problem that we've seen that nobody can really solve unless they've been very careful about their processes way before, back in the day, is having a lot of data on how are these things solved in general. What is, if this, let's say we're making investment decisions. We're in decision-making business. And a lot of times we would look at a company and say, that's a pass. A lot of times this is like, I want to investigate further. A lot of times I'd say that's a no-brainer, we'll write a check. What was in our head when we were making this decision? Like, how did we come up to that conclusion? Yeah. When we talk to experts, let's say we're looking at an open source company, and we speak to one of our LPs who's built Playwright, and it was like, can you look at this and say, hey, is it going to be good? And they look at it and they're just like, and they shrug. But we have trained our natural neural networks to interpret the shrug in 3-4 different ways. Now, since we haven't been documenting all this, there's nothing to put into an agent to enable it to autonomously make these decisions or even support these decisions. So what I think is incredible value that Copilot Kit is bringing, or is going to bring, is that you can decipher human interactions and human decisions, and maybe in the moment ask the person, can you explain this? There's a very good example of this implementation in Chinese courts. So I don't know if you've heard about it, but China has introduced AI ruling into their courts about a year ago.
I did not know that.
We don't know to which extent, but as a...
So now every judge in China has an AI copilot that tells them that what decision should be. The judge can overrule it and say, no, I think this is what it's right. But then they're obliged to write a page-long explanation to AI for RLHF.
Yeah. I mean, that's first, it's incredible. I mean, and I think as long as there is, just thinking out loud, right? As long as the human has the overriding capacity, that seems like a good idea. Net positive, I suppose, although I'm sure there's biases that the result can introduce. Yes. And so I don't know, maybe I'll think about it some more.
If you try DeepSeek and asking it a bunch of questions that the party doesn't like.
Right, but it could even bias the judge's opinion, right? If they first saw some answer, it's like, maybe that's what I should do. Larger point before, right? So the context, the prompting, I think we are actually operating on all three of these, even before the data, right? So one of the reasons you want user interactive agents is because of the problems you mentioned, right? Mm-hmm. There's context all over the place. It can come either at build time, right? But then there's only so much context that you can do at build time, because this agent is going to run for thousands of cases, maybe more, right? So it could be at runtime, and then the agent has to go and look for the data, but it's not really an intelligence problem. Like, you can take the smartest person in the world, drop them in a new job, ask them a question that everybody in the job can answer, they don't know what to do. So I think this tribal knowledge has to come from the user. So right now, phase one is enable the agent user interactivity, right? Allow the agent to reach out to the user, allow the user to see what context the agent already has, change it, augment it. Same with the prompts and the nudges for what to actually do. So that's where we are right now. Every time the user is doing that, that is generating the data that can be used for the second part. And right now we're just throwing it away because you can't boil the ocean, right? So you facilitate the agent user interactivity. That is already making these agents, turning them from very cool to actually useful today in production. But then now you're kind of passively collecting data that if you wanted to buy, you would be paying a lot of money for. Of course, as the scale grows, it's not going to stay the same price per data label. But what Scale AI did for 3 or 4 or one handful of companies, right? You can have now for 30,000 or 300,000. Maybe every single application or micro agent can have its own RLHF loop that is kind of improving over time. So I think that that is an exciting, it's a little bit speculative, but a lot of AI is a little bit speculative, and that's something.
The data markets are changing fast. So we spoke to Toloka about this, which is like a competitor to Scale AI. And what they said is like 10 years ago, they were paying like $1 per maybe 20 pics for people to label sneakers on a picture. And then they started paying $5 per 20 pictures for people to tell if it's new sneakers or used sneakers. Now they're like paying $100 per like a page of text reviewed by an expert financial professional or like a lawyer. And then they're also doing a lot of synthetic data based on that. So I think the more specialization AI gets, like the more advanced data has to be and the more hands-on it has to be. So you are really unlocking that. I really like how Andrei Karpathy put it in his talk. And by the way, highly recommended watch Andrei Karpathy, Y Combinator AI School. So he said is, imagine like if you're bringing an LLM into your business, imagine that you're hiring a multiple PhD professional who is incredible, but they have one problem. They have their memory wiped every 5 minutes. So they need to learn how to navigate in your organization. They need to learn how like different things are solved. And for that, they will need Copilot Kit for users to be able to tell them these things when it matters. And they need some sort of a memory to store this, and then it has to be efficient. So there's a lot of things. So I think it makes total sense. But let's maybe shift gears and talk a little bit less about technology and a little bit more about your company, because we wanted to deconstruct your business as what is Copilot Kit as a company?
And I am wondering about that. Do you think it's different to have, is a team working on an open source product is different from other teams?
It's a really good question. I think the answer is yes. And even internally, right? Right now we're too small to really have 3 teams. So I say we have the shadow of 3 teams right now, and people kind of overlap. But generally speaking, we're thinking of on the product side, we have kind of the ecosystem enmeshment, right? And that's open source. You really want to be part of the ecosystem and do these kind of win-win games across the ecosystem. And then you have enterprise is the second kind of big pillar, and it's a totally different mindset. You're building for large businesses. They don't care about traction, and they don't care. They care about the one problem that they have. It's oftentimes not a sexy technology problem. It's some boring permissions problem, and you need different mindset. And the open source side, the community play is extremely important, right? You want developers who can engage with other top developers across the ecosystem as peers, as equals, and we're lucky to have these types of folks. Yeah, in the enterprise, you want professional conduct and talk to the product managers on the other side and help them fix their problems. And these are different mindsets. So I think both the companies and even the teams have different mindsets.
So what does Copilot Kit look like, a company? How many people you got?
Yeah, I mean, we're still pretty small, right? We're 12, 13. We have some external kind of contractors. Depends how you count as well. But we're 12. We have, me and my co-founder, who's also my brother. I'm CEO, he's head of growth. We have a DevRel, community engineer. So that's help manage all the tutorials, which is kind of the best converting content in our world. How do you build something? And now we went recently from having, 1 partner to 2 partners to 10 partners in a couple months. So have to have a bit of a, mass production motion around that. We have kind of a go-to-market person. So that's, take these.
So these partners, they help you develop the product, or they're like design partners?
I mean, they're in many cases building a big part of it on their side, right? So when we initially did co-agents integration with LangGraph and then CrewAI, we did most of the work and they supported us. And that takes, at that time it took, a few months per integration like that. That's why we realized, okay, you can't repeat this at the timeline that we wanted to repeat this. AGUI, right, the protocol, the agent user interaction protocol, factors out a piece of this, cleaned it up. We did some time on just that. But now these partners, it's the other way around. They're actually doing the integration. They're doing the major building. and we're supporting them when they need help. So that's if we're looking at the agent framework side, right? There's other types of partners as well, right? Kind of MongoDBs or there's always something you can do together. But if we look at the agent framework side, it's really their engineers are building with us or building against the protocol, and we're supporting them. We also have some things similar with like the larger companies. AWS and Google had a few threads open with each of these. And it's a lot of fun, you really start to see the open source kind of community standardization paying exponential dividends to some extent.
A lot of times when people hear open source community developed products, they think of an engineer in his mom's basement in Bulgaria, just like writing a few lines of code and making something better.
Yeah.
But that a lot of times, most of the times, it's a large company that relies on your product to sell their product.
Yes.
And they are coming to you and saying, hey, that would be cool, like if we could build this feature for our users, can you support this and like include this in the base, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the stuff that we start to see even more of when we went from the AGUI, right? Because I think there was a big gap there. The reason we wanted to do this quickly too is because they were all telling us, hey, we need this like now, right? And this vacuum, if it's a strong vacuum, it's not going to stay a vacuum for long. So that's the reason it was important for us to move in, that we've seen it actually follow up, right? We put this out and there's been a ton of traction, including for these really large organizations, right? That they're trying to solve the same problem in their own context. Maybe they have their own internal agent framework. Maybe they're using other systems, but they have the same problem. And so now they're joining the ecosystem, not necessarily on the commercial side right now, but now they're part of the ecosystem. They're contributing to it in major ways. So actually a Google ADK integration that came from one of those really large companies that at the very top technical leadership of the company, there was a really strong interest for that, and they're doing it. They're adding amazing value to the ecosystem. A relationship that can grow in interesting ways as we grow as a company.
From one point of view, you're like contributing to the world, and it's a little bit harder to monetize than the proprietary technology, but at the same time, it opens like every door, brings you immense interoperability.
Yeah.
Your technology works with everything there is because everything there is wants your technology to work with it, and they build it.
Yeah.
So in a way, you don't have 12 people on the team, you have 100.
Or even more, right? And it's both the teams and where they sit, right? You can't buy the employee at the large company.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Somebody with like a $2 million a year comp package sitting at Google or Microsoft that are very genuinely interested to make this thing work with their stuff.
Yeah, and not only the monetary side, like the fact that they're there, right? So they're controlling and they're kind of influencing where this large organization is spending all of the other engineers' work, right? So if you now set up the foundation, have thousands of engineers in your organization, that's something that's going to, there's a forcing function that grows with time. And so, it's definitely delayed. You have to delay it. We're thinking of, be future greedy, right? It's a business. To be honest, I mean, I'm very open source pro in general, but it is a business, right? We're not a charity. So, there has to be a business case that makes that work. And I think in some ways it's kind of lucky that it does work, right? If you just play these kind of win-win games, it does open enough opportunities that you can monetize. Yes, it's delayed because initially you're providing all the value for free. Mm-hmm. You can build additional value that is not part of the open source and monetize there over time. And like you said, there's a lot of very successful examples for this. So,
So going back to the company, so you got GTM people.
One
person who like speaks to enterprise customers, figures out what they need, like how to make money on all that.
Right.
Who else you got?
So the rest of it is engineers, right? So.
Well, what kind?
We have, I would say, 2 personas, maybe 3 personas. The developer infrastructure, kind of hardcore, we call it innovation leadership type role. So that's the architect mindset, right?
More like working on infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah, infrastructure, and really can make a new protocol that is going to be used by across the whole ecosystem for something that is quick, fast-moving. We're actually, for good or for bad, we're in a pretty complex part of the stack because we're the glue between a lot of other components that are themselves doing something new and moving very quickly on their own. So it's a pretty complex glue layer to be in. And so and you need to make clean abstractions and also be able to build them and develop them quickly. So we have that persona, a few, again, we're a small team, but we have a few of those. We have kind of the delivery lead persona, and that's, okay, you build something, you have to make it clean and production ready, and that's a different mindset and mentality. And then you kind of have the jack of all trades, which I think is really important for a startup at our stage, that can take the front end and the back end and the enterprise and the open source and like figure out how to make it all work. And if you don't know something, you learn it and then you build it. So that's kind of the three personas that we have.
What's your take on remote work?
Well, we are remote.
Okay.
And for good or for bad, it's definitely, there's advantages and disadvantages for sure. On the advantages side, you just open the pool of talent a lot. I think that's the main advantage. It's not really about cost. So actually, I worked at Doximity, which is health tech. When I joined, it was kind of a scrappy start, now a multi-billion public company, so learned a lot there. But anyways, they were remote before COVID, or partially remote. I was in person in the San Francisco office, but a third of the company was remote. And one of the things I learned there is, yeah, it's not a cost-saving effort because you need to spend a lot of money to bring people together a few times a year, both for morale, for productivity. You Zoom too much, people start to dislike each other, and then you have to bring people together to kind of...
What usually you do when you're together?
We've had a few of these offsites now. We basically all get together for about a week somewhere, and both do, it's very intensive. It's kind of morning to evening most days. It's a lot of building together and discussing and planning the next quarter or 2 quarters. And also having some fun, like doing some things that like you don't normally do. People every single time build a lot of camaraderie. Everybody leaves kind of on a high note, and yeah, it kind of buys you the fuel to go back on Zoom for a few months and make that work. And honestly, actually now that we're also growing a little bit bigger and these offsites, we're still small. Everything is relative, right? But I'm also making budget available for folks who just want to get together for a week to build something together because they think like there's a project that needs to happen. So people can just do that spontaneously, and you don't have to pull the whole team together. That's kind of becoming a bigger operation. So I think that's really important. So that's the advantage. Is you grow the talent pool. You have really, really, really excellent people. I would say that there's probably, our engineers are kind of the best engineers in their part of the world in many cases, or like the very best. The disadvantage is a lot of things are default easy with in-person work become default hard. You can make them work, but you have to work for it. Process becomes a lot more important. We've iterated a lot. We've now finally arrived at something I think that seems to work well enough that we're not iterating too much. But yeah, there's a lot of things that you have to, they don't just by default happen the way you want them to. You can make them work, but you have to put the attention and the time.
How much is, I don't know, Marina, maybe you want to take over. I just wanted to speak a little bit about the fundraising part. So how is it different to raise money for an open source company, and what is a different type of investors you have to speak to?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's definitely not every investor, and I think for good actually to some extent.
What you are looking for from
right, exactly. So you want people who understand the open source motion and what the play is, because for a lot of, it is different from traditional businesses, right? Where you're giving away the thing, like what are you doing, right? Like aren't you a business, you're trying to make money, why are you giving it away for free? Of course, if you take a long time horizon, then these things have worked out very well in the past, and you can't do it the other way. It just doesn't work. But not every investor understands that. Yeah, I think you want people who understand the journey, and that for us, I mean, we're lucky enough to have the ability to choose when we raise money, and I'm very glad We have Signal Fire as our lead, and they've been really fantastic for us and you guys. You want people who will challenge you on what should be challenged and not on what should not be challenged.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's not every person by default. You have to really understand the technology space.
How did you, maybe the last question from me, how did you pick a license? Because you can go, copyleft, you can go Apache, MIT.
Yeah. Honestly, look, we spent a few days thinking about it in the beginning, and then we just continued on with that. So I can't tell you that it's necessarily the optimal, but we have MIT license. It seemed like a good default. It's a pretty maximally open license. The reason we did that, right, is the war to win now is the mindshare and the community love, and anything that gets in the way of that could come back and hurt you maybe later, but it's premature, I think, to you can only control and have attention for so many things. So that's not the battle we chose to fight.
Okay.
And also and I think it does make sense long term, and also kind of fits with what I would want to have out there in the ecosystem.
That is good, because we are, it's actually a very important question for us. We are thinking about open sourcing a bunch of our stuff that we built internally in the fund. Not only the software, but also our product processes, playbooks.
Oh, playbooks, yeah.
Yeah, and that was a very meaningful conversation that we had with Charles Gurinton, who is one of the co-founders of Mistral. We were like never ready. We're like, we still have to do a lot of stuff. And he's like, anything you can open source now that is immediately helpful to somebody, that's something that they can spend maybe 10 minutes of their time to use it and get some value out of it, just go and open source it. Now, but that's going to be interesting. Like, we're going to pick a license. We're going to start trying to build a community. So we'll definitely ask you a lot of questions.
Yeah. So and the whole idea of this podcast is to learn from you, from your experience, and to be inspired by you. Probably you can recommend us and our audience anything, books, something to listen, something to watch, something you like personally.
Yeah, good question.
Maybe some even fiction books.
But maybe even before I would go to that, because I think what you said before really resonates with me too. I think there's a lot of lessons I learned in the open source space over the last couple of years that I think should be applied way outside of where they're currently being applied. So I think that's a really good trend to see.
Can you share these lessons?
Yeah, look, I think the community, so I mean, first, what does a community look like? Understanding the adoption curve really explicitly, right? Which is something that startups do in general, not just open source, but in open source you see that even more, right? So the early adopters, it's a totally different cohort you're aiming for, right? So we didn't have docs in the beginning. We were aiming on purpose. We're aiming for the folks who will just go in the source code and figure out how to use it. And then you had bad docs, and then you have slightly good, better docs. And there's this adoption curve that you can explicitly optimize for. Like you should not be spending your time initially on good docs, because it's only the most hardcore early adopters are gonna care anyways in the early days. You can't really skip stages there. So I think that mindset, having the different cohorts of people, right? You have the users who are sophisticated in really, really large group. And then you have the contributors, which are even more sophisticated in a smaller group. And they're just different personas. And these are all parts of the community that you want to engage with on different terms. And the fact, even just the organization force of a GitHub repo, I think is incredibly, incredibly powerful. And we are even gonna be doing even more on that side, because you have all this attention that comes in. And a lot of it wants to be useful somehow, but it's not, in a non-open source world, and again, it doesn't have to be product and technology, anything, like, from, I don't know, parent groups on Facebook or something, to academia, to, I think lots of different parts of the world, people can't by default be useful. Like, what am I gonna do? I wanna do something, but how can I do it? If I did something, how can I bring it back into the larger group? So I think that idea of a GitHub repo with open source type mentality and management can really extend far beyond where it's currently being used. So that's and I know that whatever I'm going to do in my life, I'm going to kind of carry a lot of these lessons to that because I really think it has application way outside of just technology businesses. But yeah, in terms of books to recommend, it's a good question. I mean, there's so many things going on that you kind of have to stay with the latest. But I think the fundamentals maybe become more important to some extent, like because you really need to be in touch with that. My background before doing startups was in physics. Got a bachelor's and master's in physics, and I still kind of like to deep dive into that. So I don't know, maybe it's a bit of a off color recommendation, but
no, it's
like
a good one.
Theories of Everything podcast lately has been a really great job. If Kurt is watching this, good job. Yeah, so I'll stick to that one.
Actually, more and more talking about AI, we started talking more about physics.
We, by the way, if you guys are watching and you haven't looked at our talk with Adam Brown, he's a theoretical physicist at Stanford. He's at DeepMind, doing quantum and doing AI. We had an amazing talk to him at our conference.
Is it on the podcast?
Yeah, it's
Give it a listen.
Yeah, it's on YouTube as well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of podcasts. I think podcasts in general. That's actually where we started very initially. The LLM media database, that was the first application. So everything loops back.
That's the best way to learn, because you're speaking to people who have spent the time and effort to learn themselves, and they're giving you the gist. And right now, yes, it's not gonna allow you to become experts, but I don't think we need to be experts now, given AI. We need to be generalists, and we need to figure out things, how they work, very quickly.
And learn quickly.
But yeah, I'm so happy that we have you on this podcast, and that I really want to persuade. I want to inspire a lot of people thinking about building a startup, or actually building a startup right now, to go for an open source. It's not only a go-to-market strategy, it's also a philosophy. And somebody was telling me that, and I do agree with this, is that if the market crash, if the internet bubble happened today, and a lot of people are like, oh, AI is a bubble, AI is gonna collapse, it's gonna be horrible, and we're all gonna lose money and die. The biggest difference from 2001 and today, it's not revenue growth or anything, or how many people use these things. It's open source. Open source was not a thing 25 years ago. It is a thing now, and the reason why open source is so important is that open source has become the way for people to create technologies so quickly and so more powerful that we're not selling 20% increase for a lot of money. We're selling 100x increase.
Yeah.
And that is just propelling our society towards exponent.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, yes, people are not making as much money as they would with proprietary stuff, but because it just becomes so big, in the end, they're going to make a shitload of money.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of this virtuous, lucky cycle, right? So it's less monetization per, but the pool grows so much bigger that you're still doing really well. And now, and also you're contributing to the rest of the ecosystem. And I think, we've gotten, in the internet, I think that's a really good point, right? The post-internet world, friction is really, really important input into how well something is going to do, right? Is it exponential growth or exponential decay? And when you can nudge things to the exponential growth side, it works. It's good for the ecosystem and it's good for you, and it's this win-win.
Yeah, because if we look at the dot-com bubble, Webvan or Pets.com or all these companies that collapsed, what happened to them? Because people were like, oh, we're overpaying, that's not enough value, we're just going to switch to something else, and they're switching to save money, and these companies just go out of business. Mm-hmm. if, let's say, all of these companies run out of funding from VCs, will companies stop using it? No. Because people look at open source stack and they're like, we are 100% dependent on that stack. We're not paying like anything noticeable for that. We will keep paying. And this thing will persevere, this will keep growing. So, I mean, like, it's just the absolute insurance from people changing their sentiment. It's like if people say, hey, we don't want to fund robotics, or we don't want to fund biotech, or we don't want to fund, something like deep tech, like it's called fusion. We don't want to maybe invest like $1 billion into quantum. Everybody still needs open source stuff because actual real life businesses absolutely depend on it. And then open source saves the thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it buys the insurance for these initial customers that allows the company to grow to the point maybe we don't even need to apply this insurance, but insurance is necessary to take the initial leap. So yeah, it's definitely a very kind of virtuous cycle, and
100%.
Yeah, maybe a business invention or a discovery in its own right.
Yeah. Marina, do you want to cover something?
Yeah, I think we covered.
Yeah, I think that was beautiful. So I want to probably do like maybe 10-15 minutes of explanation for like less. So I think the way we I don't want to disrupt the flow because it was like high energetic, but there's a lot of things that you mentioned that are very hard to understand for people who are less technical. And we want this to be able to understand. So I'm thinking, do you guys think it's going to be better for us to just put text explainers? So people would just like pause and read and then pause and read? Or maybe...
I don't know, I always just listen to podcasts, So
Yeah. Do you have any materials like...
Yeah, we have materials. I mean, we could, I don't know if maybe that's kind of where you're going, right? Could do like a thumbnail that instead of could we do a text-only explanation too, but could be like a small clip that just talks about the thing.
Yeah.
But somebody who hasn't heard about, open source tech before, hasn't heard about, agentic stack,
right?
They would need to try to dive in.
Yep.
And understand. And a lot of, we do want business people to understand that too. Yep. We don't want just engineers to read that as like, oh yeah, I know Copilot Kit, that's good.
Right.
Because
we could do maybe like just a Q&A type session at the end that people can, it's like, hey, deep dive into some of these terms if you don't know them.
So you said DevRels that you have, developer relations. Why do you need them?
Yeah, so developer relations is the bridge between the community and the engineering team. Right, so the engineering team is not out there talking to the users of the software every single day. They're not out there evangelizing the software every day. So the developer relations is about, essentially you can think of it as marketing for developers. Really, that's kind of the simplest way to understand it. But good marketing for developers speaks to developers really on their terms. Right, so the content you have is tutorials that developers can go through and build whatever they're trying to build with your stack as part of it. It's not just your stack; it's the whole thing together, and you're a component there. It's about giving support to developers, and then taking the input from support and bringing that in an actionable way to the team so that we can build whatever is missing, whatever people want, whatever bugs people are hitting. So, and then it's also just speaking about it in events and giving demos. It's actually one of the hardest by far roles to hire for because you need both a technical mindset, like you need to be a good engineer actually to be a good DevRel, and you have to be interesting to listen to and charismatic and you want to do public speaking. These things tend to, for whatever reason, filter each other out for the most part, right? Most people who are technical engineers, they don't want anything to do with public speaking, or they're not interesting even if they do want to. and vice versa. So like it's a really kind of this intersection of two different talent pools that can be a huge force multiplier for everything that you do. Because just because you build something doesn't mean people know about it, but it's hard to find, but it's worth it.
Another question that I wanted to explain is, so open source has a gazillion different licenses.
Yeah.
And we kind of covered like how you chose the one that you want to do. Which ones would you find, the most common for agentic technologies?
So maybe even to take a step back before the license, right? Open source, what it means is it's about open source code is kind of, I think that's where the word probably comes from. Now source means a few other things as well. But, you're building a product, there's source code. Somebody wrote the code that makes the product. And open source means you're putting that out there publicly. So not just the product, it's not freemium. It's not free and it's not freemium. It's different from that. It's the thing that the company is using to make this product available. We're putting that out there. And so you can put it out there, and that's, GitHub, probably everybody's familiar with at this point, where it lives and you can view it. But just because it's out there visible doesn't mean you're giving everybody also the right to do whatever they want with it. So there's different licenses that have become common over the last couple of decades, I suppose. We are, as I said, MIT license, which means take it essentially. I'm not a lawyer, don't take it as legal advice, but do whatever you want. You can copy it, you can modify it, you can do whatever you want with it. There's more restrictive licenses that let you do whatever you want with it as long as you keep the same type of license on your thing. So you cannot take it and build something close. And there's other licenses that have evolved over the last few years that say everybody can use it except for really large companies. If you're over $1 billion in revenue, you have to pay something. So there's kind of this mix of licenses. And like I said, I'm honestly not an expert on what is the most optimal strategy. We kind of just went with a sane default of just keep it simple.
Yeah, so basically anything that allows people to understand how it works, use it for their own project or their company, and then if they need to change it or they want to maybe resell it, then there are different licenses that are built specifically for that use case.
But don't be too creative with licenses, otherwise it will ruin your open source strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you maybe explain, so we kind of covered how, what people need to use to build something that enables them, but what exactly AGUI does and how do people get value out of it?
Yeah, AGUI stands for the Agent User Interaction Protocol. And that's the layer that we factored from kind of the insides of Copilot Kit, and then we cleaned up, put it out there as its own protocol that people can build towards. It's a lightweight, open, event-based protocol, which means as the agent is running, it's emitting one of 16 standard events that are compatible with AGUI. The agent can also accept one of a few standard inputs from the user. And now you have input and output, and you can facilitate rich user interactivity. So that's the protocol at a basic level. We built it to be kind of maximally interoperable by design, which means part of the protocol includes a middleware layer, which makes it both, so I mentioned before, the events just have to be compatible with AGUI. They don't have to be exactly the same events, because maybe you have your own naming schemes for events and so on. So the middleware layer can convert events from one form to a equivalent form. And it also makes the protocol transport layer agnostic, which means the events can be emitted however you want. The middleware can do whatever, you can write whatever code you want there. Most integrations just emit these events with SSCs, which is one of the standard technologies for emitting server-side events. Mm-hmm. But it could be other technologies such as webhooks, which means the server is calling some other URL with events when things happen, and kind of everything in between. So that's the technical kind of lay of the land. Maybe it's a bit on the technical side.
Yeah, I think it's just to sum it up. in more like in less technical terms. It's basically a standard protocol that allows agents to input like what users want to change in the process of the AI making thoughts and solutions.
Yeah, it's essentially agents, AI agents. They're just computer programs at the end of the day, right? But they are very strange computer programs compared to what we had before. They're long running. They're interruptible. They stream. They need kind of monitoring and nudging. So this is very different from what we had until 2 years ago, where you have an API behind some REST endpoint. You make a call and you get an instant response, and it's over. So that's why there's a need for a different way to interact with these things versus just make a REST API call. And what it enables is the agent, the mental model. It's actually really simple at the end of the day. The mental model is very similar to working alongside another type of person or a person that is better at some things, worse at other things. It's much faster than you, that's for sure. But it can't do everything as well. You want to be able to nudge it in the right direction when it is not going the right direction. You want to easily give it context. People talk about context engineering a lot these days, which means give the agent what it needs to know to make the decision, right? Because like you said earlier, it forgets everything every 5 minutes. A big part of context is almost a UI problem. How do you allow the end user to bring the right context at the right time to the agent? So all of these things, another interesting thing about these programs is they talk to the users in both structured and unstructured data at the same time, right? You have the structured, here's the state that it's changing, here's the tool calls that it is calling. The unstructured is the actual conversation, right? Which now is mostly largely, text-based, maybe soon voice, maybe later video as well. So you have both of these at the same time. All these different corner cases add up to a lot of overhead that anybody building any type of user interactive agent needs to deal with. There's just no way around it. It's kind of death by a thousand cuts. The V1 agentic applications just solved it themselves, right? That's kind of the most hardcore teams, right? The cursors of the world and so on. But if you think like we do, that's what all of software is going to look like very soon, and maybe a big part of productivity, period, then this needs to be repeated at really large scale, and you don't want to resolve these problems again and again and again. One thing we actually didn't even talk about before is, AGUI, it's an instance of what people call an MN protocol. And what that means is it turns an M times N problem into an M plus N problem, right? So you have M frameworks, let's say, right? So I mentioned LangGraph, Crui, Agno, AG2, like AmIndex, or your own framework if you're a large company, or the No framework, which is another kind of special case of this type of thing. You have N clients, right? So CopilotKit, we started with React Web. That's the main client we built for first, but you want to expand to all the web platforms, right? Angular is large, it's for, somewhat kind of more technology, a little bit backwards businesses that are often very cash flush, kind of a little bit more older school technology. Besides web, you have mobile, you have messaging. Actually, we're in talks with one of the really kind of hyperscalers about a messaging-based client. There's a new text messaging protocol called RCS that Apple recently added to iOS. Google has had it for a while already. That lets you almost have an application instead of a text message conversation. So it's not just text in and out. You can have buttons, menus, whatever. So you have all these different types of clients, and naively, each one of these agent frameworks would have to build a client for each one of these environments. And with AGUI, now you just build, okay, each one of these has one integration to AGUI, which is maybe a couple weeks of work. And then each client, you have a client for each environment with AGUI. And now the whole ecosystem gets this kind of, many-to-many crossover.
Right, so it saves a lot of time in making agents universal.
Right.
For actual use cases that people need for their business.
Yeah. Maybe you want to take a LangGraph agent and serve it through text messaging with all the human-in-the-loop interactions, right? For customer support in South America and Asia, people do everything through messaging applications. So, that's one of the
Yeah, I think that this is a super important point. But well, congrats with the launch, and I'd call it soft pivot.
Right.
Because your product's already very successful, but now it seems like you are very close to becoming the actual standard for universal technology. And I hope that since the market is growing at an incredible speed, 3-4 years from now, it's just going to be billions of users using, maybe not even realizing that they're using your technology, but everybody's using it, and no one can really do stuff without the tech that you're working on.
Yeah, I mean that's what we hope to do, and I think that agent human interface layer, I think is really important, really kind of thick layer that we want to grow into more and more and more, yeah, that's our goal. So thanks so much for having me.
Super cool. Thank you very much. Good. So I think we'll have to figure out how to reorganize all of the questions, but I think we can do it. Do you have any time frame when you want us to publish this?
What's the relevant timescales here, right? It's
So from couple of weeks to we can maybe hold it for 2 months and then release it, depending on when you want people to. So
Right.
we don't have too much audience, but we can get usually 20,000-30,000 people to listen to it. A lot of, so I'd say half are engineers. And a lot of people would just I want to work.
Engineers and founders, yeah.
And founders either I want to use it or I want to work for this company, but also a lot of people who are just generally trying to learn new things.
Yeah, I think September makes sense to me. I think
that's good.
Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, and also it's always good to use this stuff as something to make fundraising better when you need this. What's it called? I forgot the word, but it's basically the echo chamber for
That's fine.
Yeah, because usually when Marina and I we were fundraising for our startup, so we tried to concentrate everything into same 2 weeks.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, somebody who starts looking at our company, all of a sudden they notice, everybody speaking about us.
Yeah. I've seen
But,
it here. I've heard about it.
Yeah.
Somebody published a review from the customers. Somebody published a media article that was and all of a sudden people realize that they've been missing something.
Yeah.
And they're I want to write a check, because you want people to feel FOMO.
No, 100%. I mean, we're likely gonna go raise before the end of the year.
Okay. So September sounds like a good.
It sounds
timing.
Tentatively good. Also, look, it's this type of world ages, quickly, right? So if we wait 2 months, then there could be a lot of other things that are.
100%.
So I think that's a good kind of middle ground. And yeah, whenever we will go fundraise, we're also gonna do a San Francisco blitz. Just try to be everywhere, like you said. So
yeah. That's good.
Yeah, I think that's good. Close enough to potentially be relevant for that. And if not, then I wouldn't want to wait too long, anyways, because then there could be a lot of other things going on that weren't.
And again, we always want more people to hear about the company, more people to use it, more people to try it.
Yeah, 100%.